So I'm very excited to be moderating this panel because it addresses one of the challenges that has essentially consumed my entire career, which is the question of what do we do about the rapid urbanization that's taking place in sub-Saharan Africa. You know, I think we all know that there is a massive population growth occurring, that this massive population growth is coming with enormous spatial expansion, and that the spatial expansion of cities and the need for increased amounts of built-up area and floor space is often being met by the informal sector in ways that are fundamentally suboptimal and that don't necessarily create pathways or platforms for the inclusion of new urban residents in the beneficial aspects of the urbanization project. And we're here today at the New Cities Summit, where we have policymakers, we have people who are operating in the development space, we have funders, we have builders, we have academics, we have the ecosystem of people here who presumably can make an impact on this challenge and who are trying to do so. And we all face similar obstacles in trying to do this work, which is the obstacle of scale. And it's really scale that we're here to talk about. How do you go from taking 5 years to build a community of 1,000 people to taking 3 years to accommodate 100,000 people, which is the kind of rate of growth that's occurring informally on the peripheries of many capital cities on the continent right now? You know, how can we increase the ability of our cities and the ability of our developers to produce large amounts of housing, large amounts of infrastructure and services? How do we do that quickly? What are the efforts that are underway? What are the lessons that we've learned? And where do we go from here? And so in this conversation, you know, we're lucky enough to be joined by some truly bright lights. I suppose I'll do the introductions now. So we're joined by His Excellency Joseph Akech, the former mayor of Nairobi. Sorry, this is very small. I know him personally, but still, I want to make sure I read your biography. So he's a renowned public servant and leader. There are many people here who know him personally, who know his work. He's someone during his time in leadership worked tirelessly to address the challenges that we're facing the city, and he specifically focused on many of the topics that are the most difficult challenges in African cities today: problems of infrastructure, public amenities, safety and security, provision of green space, increasing the supply of housing, and improving quality of life for the residents. His legacy is visible in the city today, and he remains actively engaged in community service. He's someone who's deeply active in advancing the future of cities in Kenya, including working on exciting programs to help cities other than Nairobi and Nairobi itself scale up to accommodate more urban residents. So we'll be hearing from him. As well, we're joined by Maxwell Maida. He's the Senior Development Planning Specialist for Infrastructure and Spatial Planning at the Malawi National Planning Commission. And in this role, which he's held since 2020, he's been helping the nation of Malawi formulate their Vision 2063, which is an ambitious effort to move the country into lower middle income status and address a number of its prevailing challenges, including the need to strengthen the capacity of secondary cities to accommodate new residents. And in that role, he's been involved in the Malawi Secondary Cities Plan. And finally, we have Leslie Ohomele. To be honest, I've never learned how to pronounce your last name. I apologize. Again, we've worked together for a while, and I should know. And he's the Associate Director of International Projects at the King's Foundation. The King's Foundation, in case you're not aware, is the personal foundation of the King of England. And this is an entity that has done extensive work on sustainable architecture, as well as sustainable agriculture, and also urbanism, heritage topics. And in his role, he gets to apply his skills as an architect, his experience working in the construction industry, and also his record of successful project delivery. And I think that you know, what I personally have seen in his tenure at the King's Foundation is a shift toward bigger picture thinking about urban issues in particular, but also attention to the fine-grained details that determine whether a project succeeds or fails. So we're very lucky to be joined by Leslie. The The general format here is that each of our panelists is going to make an opening statement, say 5-6 minutes long. Then I'm going to ask them one question, and then we're going to take questions from the audience. So I hope that as you're listening, you're stimulated. Again, I know late on the second day. If you think of a question, write it down. Hopefully we'll have time for Q&A to be fairly engaged and do a couple rounds. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. So we'll start with His Excellency Mayor Joseph.
Well, Pat, thank you very much indeed. Today I'm so happy that I can get all this congregation today because I'm celebrating my 78th birthday. Can you imagine that? So thank you very much indeed. Wow, thank you. Good, thank you. Distinguished delegates, governors, in fact, I should have really had the opportunity of having the governors here. Urban leaders, partners, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a great honor to be before you here today as the Kenya Program Lead for the Africa Urban Lab, and more so as a proud urban practitioner with deep roots in Kenya involving city story. Let me begin by thanking the organizers of this city's summit for creating a space where we can not only share knowledge, but also co-create solutions, bold solutions for the future of African cities. We are gathered here today at a time when the future of Africa is undeniable urban. By 2050, nearly 60% of our population will live in cities. Kenya alone is urbanized at a pace that outstrips both planning and infrastructure. This growth is not just happening in our major cities like Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu, but in smaller towns, market centers, and urban peripheries, places that are often invisible in national discourse, but deeply consequential to everyday life. At the heart of this transformation lies a central question. Are we planning for the city we are becoming or reacting to the cities we already are? At African Urban Lab, we have made it our mission to respond to this question through research, partnership, and practical urban intervention. Over the last decade, AUL has supported more than 30 African cities in developing scalable, data-driven urban solutions. And today we are proud to bring that expertise home to Kenya through the Urban Expansion and Periphery Program known as UXP. The UXP is a country-centered initiative that supports our fast-growing urban areas to plan ahead of growth, not after the congestion, not after the conflict, but before. It empowers counties to reserve land for roads, service, plans spatially, engage communities, and build the technical capacity to manage growth, because we know urban expansion is inevitable, but unstructured expansion is not. It is in just that few months we have engaged over 11 counties, from Kajiado to Kisumu, Bungoma, Nyeri, Nakuru, Makueni, just to mention a few, bringing together planners, governors, municipal borders, and communities to rethink how urbanization can serve both people and prosperity. And what we have seen is so powerful. One, counties are eager to reclaim planning as a development tool. The other one is young planners ready to learn and innovate. The other one is communities that we want to be part of shaping their future, and they want to be part of us. This is not just a technical program, it is a political and social commitment to urban justice and inclusive growth. Looking ahead, we envision a Kenya where every county, big or small, has the tools to plan its future with clarity, equity, and ambition. We envision towns where displaced populations are informal residents, and emerging entrepreneurs and space, safety, and opportunity. We see corridors of mobility, clusters of innovation, and systems of accountability that make urbanization a force for dignity, not division. But to achieve this, we need more than good ideas. We need participation. We need the county, the council governors, the national agencies, donors, academia, and private sectors who will also play a major big role to scale what's working and fix what is not, but that will be part of objective as we get along with them. As we begin our today's session, I invite you to join us, not just in talking about urban expansion, but in shaping it, because the city of tomorrow is not a mystery. It is a choice, and that choice starts with us here and now. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
As already introduced, I come from a government agency that is responsible for planning for the country for a long term. Of course, that starts from the medium term. Now, we realize that as a least developed country, we've got our own share of problems in urbanization. And we've got cities that were established in the 1870s, another one 1975. And those are the places that we have good planning. We've got a little bit of planned settlements and things like those. But you'd find that our policies in the past have been pro-poor, pro-rural, that we were encouraging people to stay in the rural areas. But now looking at the focus as per our mandate to look into the future, our population as a country is increasing, and that requires us to plan better for settlements and to grow the economy. So that's what drove us to change our policy thinking into urbanization. And in urbanization, we look at most three aspects. I think the first one is to create new cities. And the second one is looking at the existing cities that we have and how best they can function to serve the purpose. And the third one is the rural areas, because that's where there is a lot more chaos as well, with very little planning going on. So to integrate all these three, we came up with a plan. And the first one is that along the creation of secondary cities, we made deliberate policies that we can create cities as a government, but also opening up for the private sector or individuals who are interested to come up with the cities. So that is ongoing as we speak. We've just joined the party of having SEZ laws. We didn't have them. When in the morning we are having a keynote from Nigeria, and when they said they've had it since 1992 or something, that's why I'm saying we've joined the party very late, but we are moving. So we gazetted that as a law, and being late to the party meant we tweaked it with support, I think, from CCI and others to make sure that it covers a wide range of investments, cities included, and export zones. What would differ are going to be the regulations amongst them. So that is ongoing. Secondly, so that will address the secondary cities, which what's happening. We've got private sector and government-led. I've also come with a team that is developing one, but they're not pitching this year. They'll pitch next year for their city. So that we already promised. So the second aspect is the planned areas that we have, the cities that we have are planned. But next to the boundary of those cities, there is chaos. People are building because there is very little control. Everyone wants to be closer to the city, but the city is not giving them services, the peri-urban areas. So that's where we've got a bigger problem. So we changed the law. In the past, only the cities were declared as planning areas. But as a country, we changed the laws so that the whole country was declared a planning area. But we lacked now capacity to enforce what we've done. The cities have got planners, have got engineers, have got architects to work on their plans, but now the adjacent areas, which are now controlled by the district councils other than city councils, we're not having that aspect of being planned. So what we've done, we've gone on an ambitious decentralization drive so that we make sure the district councils, the ones that are adjacent also to the cities, have got the necessary capacity So we have the engineers there, we've got the planners there, we've got the surveyors there, so that they can now plan in adjacent to the city to avoid having chaos just after the planning areas. So that is being rolled out across the country so that we can scale up and see the future that is well planned. So that is ongoing. And the last aspect that I mentioned is now, I think there's the existing cities. We've had them for a while, but they still lack some services, including infrastructure. So we've also gone on a drive to invest in infrastructure, including roads and water and things like those, so that the services that people would enjoy in a city should be available. Now, with that, we don't want everyone to be flocking to live in the existing cities. That's why the secondary cities are now there, so that whenever we're creating them, they can now draw and avail opportunities for people in the rural areas in a city that is close to them, and that is also providing market opportunities for their produce and also jobs that they can also get from these cities. So in a nutshell, that's the fronts that we are pushing towards the expansion that we're expecting in the next 20 to 30 years in urbanization. Thank you.
Is this on? Yeah, thank you. The King's Foundation was set up essentially to deliver His Majesty's philosophy on harmony. Harmony between people, places, and the planet. And it's a very simplistic definition, and deliberately so, because then it covers everything. From people, how we live traditionally, culturally, sociologically, socially, the environment that we inhabit or occupy, how we design the spaces around us, to be sensitive not just to our needs, but also to the planet that we live on, and how we impact on that, and how we can modify our behavior in order to ensure that the planet is here for as long as we are here. And so we focus a lot on community engagement. For the King's Foundation, it is important that every solution that we come up with is context specific, and it relates to the people that it is meant to serve. So we spend a lot of time and effort at the front end of every of our participation in things, in understanding the people that we're meant to be addressing. Who are the demographics involved? Who are the stakeholders who are affected by the decisions that we're making? How do we ensure that the big picture doesn't forget the little details? And so for us, that approach means that we've been involved in everything from individual community level projects to large master plan for cities, to government frameworks for development planning and policy making. And so I think the reason we're here is because we have a passion for every activity, every intervention that improves the quality of life across the planet. And in particular, His Majesty's affiliation with the Commonwealth means that, and with my own role now, that we are also turning our focus back towards Africa as well, because the challenges that we face on this continent are very specific. And I see a lot of solutions that come with a perspective from other environments and cultures. And I don't see, in my role, enough effort being made to understand the unique situations and the unique perspectives that exist on the continent. And so that's something that we're quite keen on. And I'm glad to be at the New Cities Summit here. And looking forward to participate. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks very much for these initial statements. So I have a general question, not a trick question, but maybe a trick question. You've each talked about different necessities as we're growing cities and making urbanization something that's accessible to more people. So His Excellency talked about the need for simplified approaches that can be locally led. Maxwell, you've talked about the need to move past a primarily rural development paradigm and think more on a continuum about the need for planning, about the need for new cities. And Leslie, you've talked about the need for harmony and for community inclusion. So, without talking about money, in each of your respective activities, what needs to happen to do more faster? So what would need to happen to double or triple? So His Excellency, you can talk about that from a public sector city perspective, you know? You can talk about that from a national government perspective, and you can talk about that from a community service organization, NGO perspective. But that's what I'd like to hear about in the context of scaling and thinking about making orderly growth in cities. What needs to happen to do more faster? What are the pieces that are missing?
Yeah, thank Pat. As you know, Nairobi has been going at a rate of 4.3%, even during my time. And you can imagine the number of the 1,000 people coming in from the rural areas into the city with lack of enough infrastructure, lack of the roads, lack of even housing and so forth. And to me, I think the most important thing, to be very brief, is that there has to be some kind of a partnership where everybody is involved, particularly the various institutions, the donors, the government, the investors, and the public community. Because this thing cannot be done alone by the government, and it cannot be done alone by the Nairobi County or by the municipality. So to me, my urge is to make sure that there is that kind of inclusivity where everybody is participating, because at the end of the day, whether you are a manufacturer, this is your city. Whether you are a resident, this is your city. When it comes to the government, it's also part of what they're supposed to be doing. And I'm very happy, if I may comment one or two things here, particularly in the housing, because we want to come up with more housing, particularly with what our government, the president, is coming up with, or trying to come up with a low-cost housing. Because when you come up with a housing, definitely you should also have other amenities, the playing ground, the schools, and so forth. And that, to me, I'm supporting him on that move. But the most important thing, whatever you do, you must have the public participation, because if you don't have the community on your side, you have a problem. Doc, let me just give you a little bit of what happened very briefly. 20 years ago, I thought I was going to be Mr. Popular, coming up with the low-cost housing. And I did not tell my people that I represent. I kept it to myself with the government agency up to the top of up to the president's office. Our people did not know. But the press people came over and asked me, Mr. Cage, the mayor, I understand you're coming up with some kind of a low-cost housing. I said, yes, but please don't print it until we come up with a formal. The next day it was, the houses represented by the mayor of Nairobi is going to be demolished. And my people was not even aware. So that brought in a lot of big fights. So when I went to church, which I normally go, usually they praise me when I come in. But when sitting down, each person was coming and said, never again, the devil will be defeated. We're not going to have any houses built. Simply because we did not have that communication. We do not have that public participation. So whatever we do, even in our own concept that we're working on, we're involving the county, we're involving the ministers, we're involving the Wananchi themselves and the governors. And I must want to take this opportunity, Doc, to allow me to singularly thank Humphrey, who has been in the forefront of helping me and helping this organization together with Simon. But again, it is all of us to work together in order to get this, to get the advancement and the development of any community that we're living in.
We've got a younger population, just typical as many countries, that is eager to work, the labor force that is already available. We've learned a headway when it comes to cities. You'd find, for example, a sugar factory that is surrounded by a sugarcane field. So the investment was being done to produce sugar and sell it, but it attracts a lot of people. And you'd find that maybe the estate itself is planned, but the areas around it, they are not planned. And you'd find it growing into a bigger township. So the economic activity that is there is growing the places, making it to be an urban area. So we we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We are to take the same principle of strategically putting such investments in areas that have got potential already to grow. So the keyword is economic investment that is going to provide a lot of jobs and economic activity that will attract the people to be at a city. So that's the approach that we want to take, because if we don't do that, people still be attracted to something that provides them with a job or economic activity. So that's the approach that we are taking strategically as a national entity, working with local entities, the local councils, so that they should come up with development plans that are pointing out to what is their comparative advantage within that region that they can put an investment into. So that we've seen that is already working, and that's one thing that we want to encourage. And if you want to come and invest in our country, for instance, whether it's a factory or something else, that's one thing that will stress that I think you're welcome to do it. And as you do your investment, as a government, as a local council, they'll be there to support in terms of, I think, issues of positioning, provision of land and things like those, so that we are a bit strategic, not just anything happening at its own will. So that's one thing that we are trying to move forward. In an area that we've seen that there is potential. For example, I think in the morning there was an issue of titanium and rare earth minerals that we are opening up in Malawi. So already those are going to open up areas that are going to become slums if we don't plan them, because people will be flocking there for jobs, people will be looking for housing, and that has to be done deliberately. And that's one thing that we are pushing forward, so that we get the jobs. And as it was already explained in the morning, we are also moving towards trying to beneficiate the minerals that we have, so that they all don't leave us with pits, but as a country we benefit, so that we sustainably benefit for the future populations. Thank you.
Okay. So you said we can't talk about money. So what we found in our experience, and scale is important because, like I said, we work at various scales, from small community-led interventions to large master plans. And we've discovered that the principle that stays consistent across that is that the community that is involved, whether it's a small neighborhood or whether it's the whole country, will have some clarity about what it is that they need, and very often we find that sometimes looking at a problem from the outside, you can misunderstand or misrepresent it, as opposed to understanding from the people within it what it is that they're dealing with and what their specific needs are. And we found that you can build a patchwork, a network of needs from the very smallest unit of the city, which is the neighborhood, the community. And that's all the master plan is. It's just a connection of little communities that are bound together into one large conurbation. And that is how cities grow. So essentially what we found is that, if you're dealing with the needs, you're finding out what each community needs and you're mapping those needs, you connect those and then you can feed that up the ladder. As the scale gets larger, you join more communities together, but at all times, it's connected to what each individual area needs or requires. And that ties into, communication, inclusivity, but it also looks at what each unique selling point for that community is and how you factor that into your thinking, because then that affects how you allocate infrastructure investment, policy planning, even the demographic, the level of education in one community will affect the ability to understand what you're doing and their reception to different methods of development planning. So I think that's what I'd say, that just learn to work from the very smallest unit. And once you understand that, you can scale up to any size you need. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. So on the question of scaling, we have kind of starting from the bottom and coming up from there, the need to be extremely strategic, to focus on economic growth, and to have more strategic coordination, and then partnerships. So we're hearing a lot about who you work with and how you work as the strategies to overcome the obstacles that keep us from scaling. So on that, I think we'll open it up for questions from the audience. Let's see. Yeah. And we'll take a few questions, but can someone run this? There we go. Good.
Thank you. Anyone who has listened to me knows that I'm very passionate about water because I work in the water sector. My name is John. I work for a company called Revive Consulting Solutions, and we try to provide solutions for sustainable management of water. Now, I want to ask former mayor, Nairobi is one of the cities that has the most difficult water situation in terms of even the rationing. If you go to people who stay in Kilimani, they tell you they get water once a week. And mainly the reason is that Nairobi water has not expanded the capacity in terms of the water that they are treating as the growth has come. As you are talking with partnership, I was thinking of the national government, the road infrastructure. We are a very heavy on road infrastructure in Kenya. Now, if you have walked, you've gone through Thika Road, and even when this expressway was being done, we have a lot of water. In fact, they say Nairobi, it rains a single evening and the city is flooded. Just one evening. And the reason is we have this drainage that is just taking water both from the building and from the roads that is so under-designed. And I'm just wondering whether there is a possibility of that connection between the national government, which is doing the road infrastructure, and the county government through the Nairobi Water that is treating the water to harvest and harness all this rain water. And I asked the same question in another session, even with the current affordable housing, do we have rain harvesting in those affordable housing projects? We have massive buildings that are many floors up, and you can't get water in the upper floors because there's very little water trickling into their tanks. Yet we have a roof catchment that we can harvest enough water probably to support that infrastructure. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Boniface Mwali, and I'd like to pose a question to the wider panel, but I'll reference this to a program that His Worship, former Mayor of Nairobi, Joe Ketch, initiated, which was a program called Sister Cities Partnership between the city of Nairobi and Denver in the United States. And I know there are very many initiatives like this around the world that seek to establish these partnerships and collaborations between various cities. And part of that, my expectation or hope is that it would enable the exchange of ideas and even policies that are progressive and that create a sort of common and progressive pace of growth between the cities that are in these sort of partnerships. So maybe from the perspective of the panel, how can knowledge exchange through programs like this be progressed within the context of new cities, and how maybe, especially for former Mayor Akech, maybe you can share with us the lessons that you witnessed from the partnership between Nairobi and Denver during your time as mayor in Nairobi.
And we'll take one more.
Thank you so much. My question is actually general. My name is Robert Mokio. I'm an urban sustainability expert. I'm an urban planner. Now, people haven't talked about something that is very important, that is urban agriculture as food security. Now, to the panelists, with the new cities, how are we looking at urban survival in terms of food security? Nobody has talked about it in the whole forum. So as an urban sustainability expert, we are looking at future cities, do we have enough land to produce food? And if at all we'll continue to urbanize, how are we going to look at food to all the population? Thank you.
Great. So we have two general questions, and we have one question that is for Mayor Joseph. I would suggest, if it's all right with you, if you close. So the general questions are about partnerships with other cities, so sister cities partnerships and how they can affect new cities and what the benefits are. And then the other general question is about food security, and are we worried about this? Is it a real topic? Is it on our minds? So Leslie and then Maxwell.
Thank you. Okay, we're short on time, so I'll be very quick. In terms of knowledge exchange, one of the things that we do and emphasize every time we work with any of our partners internationally is make sure there is a local component that owns the process that we're involved in. And for us, it's important that we're not seen as bringing in expertise that they cannot replicate. It's important for us, therefore, to work with the capacity of the people that we have and to bring them along in the process to the point where they're able to independently carry out things. So I think the Sister Cities Partnership is a good idea, but it only works in practice when the people who are actually involved in any of the technological situations that are involved actually have a sincere intention to depart and leave that knowledge behind. For food security, I think that what we found with our community engagement is that when you speak to the agrarian communities, they will identify the land that they use for farming. And this is where it's important, again, to understand the people that you are talking to. You know, you don't have an urban plan for a city that just takes a swath of land and says, this is housing. You've got to find out where are the drainage channels, where are the flood plains, where are the farms, where are the areas that people use. And then what is left over is what you then efficiently try to use to provide the housing and other amenities for your cities.
All right. I think quickly I'll talk about the issue of water, although it was directed to the mayor, but also the issue of food. Now, you'd begin to see that currently now we're having green buildings and such ratings in our cities at the moment. In the past, those things weren't applicable, and I think they are gaining momentum, and many countries are in the process of coming up with policies and guidelines to achieve that. And in our case, we're in the process of coming up with such guidelines, and I think rainwater harvesting is one of those things that will play a key role. And we are also blessed to have a lot of water, for example, maybe the lake and things like those. So there are various programs that are being worked on to suffice. For example, we've got a 500 million project to get water from one of our lakes to the capital. Now, it's almost 120 kilometers. So along the whole 120 kilometers, so there are plans to use that water to distribute it to the other locations, and also using multi-purpose dams, that you can have a dam that you can do irrigation with it, and you can also get potable water from the same. When it comes to, I think, food issues and food security, yes, it's going to be, in our case, it was one of those things that that made us to start thinking of planning better, because people were just building anywhere, even in land that is quite productive. So that's one of the reasons that I said, no, let's make the whole country a planning area and provide the expertise within the local authorities to make sure that they're able to zone settlement areas, they're able to zone areas for agriculture. At the moment, in the actual cities, the CBDs, agriculture is not encouraged for the reasons of, I think, use of pesticides and things like that. So that calls for the planning that I've mentioned, that we have to plan better. And I think I haven't mentioned the other aspects that we are doing in terms of encouraging food security. And probably one of the presentations that was done by small farm cities takes that initiative, that if you want to build a sustainable economy, they should be able to produce their own food and make money from that investment. So we are encouraging such interventions. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I'll go the other way around. As far as water is concerned, we must commend our governor, because she just gave us the latest information a couple of weeks back, about 2 months ago, And he said they're coming up with a plan to make sure that we have enough water in Nairobi. He's working together with the national government as far as the water department is concerned, and he's also got some assistance or working very closely with other agencies from outside. So the question of the water, definitely, I can see it being solved in the very near future through the office of the governor himself, who is on top of it. On the question of the sister city, I was the initiator of the sister city, and I began with America, and I took so many young people to America, and some of them even now are members of parliament. And one of them, for you people, you may be surprised, because I was working for Pan American Airways, and I said, why can't we do an in-flight service having the Kenyans? And one of them, whom we employed, was Jeff Koinange. And I'm sure all of you know Jeff. He's a very wonderful young man, and he did extremely well in terms of promoting Kenya, both here in the US. So basically, I think that's where I'm going to leave it at. The agriculture part of it, I think I'm not an expert, but definitely I'm sure the Ministry of Agriculture and others, government agency definitely will be working up on it. But the most important thing is the twinning. Right now, I'm trying to promote Inter-Africa. I am having a working relationship with Ethiopia through Kenya-Ethiopia Friendship Association. And we have just signed an MOU with Ethiopian University of Aviation, the only one of its kind in Africa. And they're soon taking our young people. So we also want you people coming in from different parts of Africa to also let's try and exchange ourselves. Not necessarily we go to America, not necessarily we go anywhere, but we should know our own continent more than our own visitors know Kenya more than ourselves. In fact, when I was making a tour, the places have never been, but if you ask a tourist, he has been there. And yet you're a Kenyan, you've never been there. So I'm trying to appeal to you to make sure that we promote, we encourage inter-Africa kind of an exchange program. As far as education is concerned, as far as the youth exchange program is concerned, I'll be having a lot of Ethiopian youth coming to Kenya and Kenyan going to Ethiopia. So that's the kind of the way that we can bring our people together. And I enjoy it because when you see young people, you're seeing a better future. And that's why we should try and encourage them up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much to all of our panelists. For those of you who weren't in here at the beginning, apparently it's His Excellency the Mayor's 78th birthday today, so let's have a round of applause for that. And let's have a round of applause for all of our panelists. Thank you. Thank you very much for your insights. Thanks.